I'm from McMurray, and I'm back with Eric Trout, VP of Business Development for Harbor Freight Transport. Eric just returned from the 2025 Breakbulk Conference in Houston. Eric, how was the trip?
It was great. Breakbulk was a huge success for Harbor Freight Transport. We had a little curveball, which is part of everyday's logistics life. We had a new booth graphics. Um, that we had set, had wanted to unveil at the Breakbulk conference, and someone, and it wasn't in my mode of transportation, lost our booth on the way to the show. So, as far as we can tell, the last tracking event, it's still in New Jersey. But um, hey, the name of the game in logistics is to develop solutions. So we were able to come up with a last minute logistical solutions, have a successful booth, and the show was great. We had a lot of foot traffic. Got to see a lot of old friends and acquaintances, a lot of companies we do business with. But we also got to meet a lot of new people who are interested in our services, whether they're the beneficial cargo owner or manufacturer or new freight forwarders. So, overall, huge success. We feel very positive coming out of Breakbulk Conference.
Okay. Um, just out of curiosity, any idea how many people actually attended Breakbulk?
I'm gonna say north of 5,000. I haven't seen the official. It it's a nice event because it's in Houston. There's so many freight forwarders in Houston. So you get the people who are presenting, but then you also get people who will work half a day on Wednesday, and then they'll take the afternoon to come in. So it's you see the ebb and flow, of the traffic at the show. It's nice.
Okay. So, in the research that I did before we did this, doing this episode, um, uh, from from what I can tell, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, one of the large topics in the freight logistics world is port expansion, and from what I understand with respect to Breakbulk, the Savannah port expansion was a well discussed topic. Um,
Yeah.
tell our listeners and our viewers about it.
Yeah, I mean, Harbor, we opened up officially in Savannah, Georgia in 2023, and we've been, gaining traction in that market. We have a 240,000 square foot facility with, we don't have the overhead cranes or the outdoor cranes, but we do have at least 70,000 pound lift capacity. Uh, you know, port the Port of Savannah has put significant infrastructure improvements and expansion into that location. They just opened up a new berth, which enables more vessels to get in and be worked at the same time. They completed their on dock rail, for intermodal shipping inland into the U.S. So, as we see that expansion, more and more ports are diversifying away just from containerized freight, and they're getting more into the project cargo and the out of gauge cargoes coming in. So, Savannah, Georgia is a great example. They have Brunswick, Georgia, which is about 70 miles south of Savannah. That's where you get a lot of project cargo, a lot of roll on, roll off, a lot of vehicles. But they also do a lot of flat rack work, both import and export in Garden City Terminal. And that's why Harbor has strategically opened up that operation, and it's been a very big success. So seeing a lot of our customers, coming around to the booth and just explaining where we're at, so the operation is fully operational, up and running, and we can do a lot of the cargo that we have historically done in New York and New Jersey at our facilities. We can replicate that in Savannah, Georgia as well.
All right. So two questions. Project Cargo. You say Project Cargo, and my brain thinks I have no clue what my brain thinks. So those that are, we'll say, logistics adjacent, what is Project Cargo?
Project Cargo is the, think of it as the infrastructure. So if you have a large project, for instance, a solar farm, right, that's going to get put up, where you're going to have just a complete focus of cargo coming in through one port, all dedicated to one project. Savannah, Georgia is a great example because of the Hyundai plant that is being constructed right outside of Savannah, Georgia. So you get everything from all the machinery to, batteries, anything that can go into
Right.
the construction of that plant, that will go in through a concentrated channel, and that's what we refer to as project cargo. And it can range from, a project can be as small as, 1 to 2 flat racks worth of cargo, upwards to, that Hyundai plant is thousands of containers and flat racks going into that production. So
Okay. Then the last question I got on this topic is uh, with respect to Savannah, where what countries of origin are shipping through, or what are some of the countries of origin shipping through Savannah?
yeah, so we are seeing, that's an interesting question, because a lot of the ocean carriers, they have what they call their sailings, or their strings, right? The vessel strings, which ports of call, etc. So Savannah, Georgia is a really great gateway, of course, from Europe, but we're also seeing a lot of cargo coming in through Savannah from, India, a lot of Sri Lanka cargo coming in there, and that's to service, the southeast. New York, New Jersey will always be um, number one port of call, but we are starting to see more and more operators who are looking at Savannah, just because of the ease of doing business at that terminal, and the efficiencies at which, that port operates to be able to get cargo in and cargo out. You don't get congestion issues. um, the processing and discharging vessels is just, it's amazing, right, in Savannah.
Okay, that blows my mind that people from, you know, Central Asia are shipping through Savannah. I brain says it should come through, the West Coast, but we won't go there.
Yeah, it depends on where your vendor base is, correct, but you do get some favorable lanes in through the East Coast that way. And then it's also, you have to take into factors, especially when you consider project cargo, right? It Do you sacrifice a couple more days of having cargo on the water versus having to truck it all the way across country from, LA Long Beach? And then when you're looking at some of this project cargo, which is out of gauge and requires permits, whether it's width, height, weight permits, it can get extremely expensive to do that. So getting the cargo closer to the end user is a key factor in that.
That makes perfect sense. And makes totally perfect sense. It's just still kind of one of those coming in through California to, you know, that just is kind of wild. All right. So another topic at Breakbulk from what my research has been the uh, bonded transload and cross-border trucking topic. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, so we are seeing a lot of inquiries about project type cargo coming into United or into the New York, New Jersey, Northeast ports, and then going into Canada. So we're seeing a lot of solar projects up there, a lot of oil and gas, and so we are seeing a lot of that machinery flow through the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, where we have the ability to pull that cargo. It's not entered into the United States commerce, so we'll move it in bond to our facilities. We can transload that cargo, and then we can move it in bond up to the Canadian border with our trucking network, where it will then customs clear into Canadian commerce, and then it will be delivered into those projects. So we are seeing a lot of that. Um, it's great business for us. Um, when you think about where Newark, New Jersey is, compared to the Canadian border, it's under 400 miles, right? So it's a really cost-effective move to be able to do that versus, say, sending it through Halifax or discharging in Halifax and then having it route on the railroad inland into Canada. So it's a very effective play.
And I would, it sounds like it would be, so they ship it in, it goes in the bonded warehouse, and then we ship it from, we'll say Newark up to um, Canada, but no U.S. tariffs are ever triggered.
Correct, correct. That's not triggered because the products, when you move it in bond out of the port and then transload at our bonded facilities, those goods have never technically entered into the U.S. commerce. So the only thing they're doing is they're being assessed the duties and taxes once it customs clears into Canada.
So do you find there are specific I'm going to say product categories that utilize this more than others?
Yeah, I would say what we've seen is more on the heavy industrial, a lot of the infrastructure type products. I mean, you really don't see a lot of that in, say, the traditional retail apparel or consumer goods. It's more of the large industrial products that we're seeing,
Okay.
the machinery, et cetera, that goes along with those programs.
So yeah, that makes a whole lot more sense of shipping it that way than having to ship it to Halifax and then take it inwards. All right.
Yeah.
So one of the topics that this seems to be in every industry, but one of the topics that another topic that was, I guess, in the top three or four that I saw was tech platforms. Um,
Hmm.
that the freight logistics industry is starting to, or in the throes of, we're going to say, improving their technology.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, today's expectation, right, with go onto a website, purchase something, and then have next day delivery, that trickles down into all industries. And we've seen vast improvements on the technology platforms, across our industry. For instance, we just implemented a new truck dispatch program, which will allow our customers to have greater visibility where their products are at any given time. They can then go to one location via the customer portal, pull down proofs of delivery, see exactly where the cargo is at any given time, see the empty returns, all those. all those pieces of information that are typically managed through brute force and awkwardness, we'll call it email or phone call, you know, the technology now has that in there. And this piece of technology is also utilizing some AI to be able to do learning, right? So we'll get new shipment requests and it'll feed into it. And through the AI learning, it will actually create those shipments in the system without, before we would have to manually do the entry to it, et cetera. So technology in the world of transportation and logistics, we've been a front runner, going back to my 30 years ago, back when we were doing, shaker clocks to manage drivers. Then you went to Qualcomm to actually have like GPS positioning on trucks and drivers could communicate. Yeah, really dating myself there, handful of quarters and a pager, right? For the drivers for communication. Um, but I would have to say in the break bulk space, we've seen some technologies emerge where that just in time uh, data to know where the truck is, where your shipment is in that shipment life cycle at real time. Those tools are coming about and being more developed, in particular for the break bulk or project cargo industry. Um, if you go back to the retail apparel, consumer goods side, you have companies who specialize in purchase order management and consolidation, and they can give you the all the information from the time the purchase order is issued to final delivery, and can tell you where that cargo is at any given time, on the globe. So we're seeing some of that technology come over into the project cargo space. um, my outside looking in approach is it's very difficult to break into that, just because the pure number of freight forwarders who are involved in the project cargo type space, and they don't all operate on one platform, right? So now you're having to talk about having integrations in with some third party software, et cetera, right? Which we all know technology is wonderful, but it can also be the great inhibitor, right?
I laugh because I've had to deal with a different client's technology issues brought on by the person who set something up passing away, and
Uh,
arguing with the ISP to just do simple things and wade through their tech. Yes, I've been dealing with tech for multiple decades. Sometimes I really wonder if we're better off than when we had handwritten notes, but okay.
yeah, I mean, then you throw a fragmented or multiple parties into it, then it kind of gets diluted down. But we are seeing advances into this space, which is very encouraging.
So in other words, so the technology allows people to have what I would call what anytime I dealt with IT or things like that as a in management, I always and was dealing with vendors, I always wanted one throat to choke.
Yeah.
Something goes wrong, there was one person that and so when I listen to you talk, the technology is enabling that same thing for these project cargo folks and breakbulk folks of literally being able to tell where something is at any given time and gives them one throat to choke. That's a phenomenal thing, unless, of course, your throat's the one they choke.
Yeah, I mean, just visibility. I mean, there's so many moving pieces. Like I said, and there's cost drivers to it, right? So if you don't pull a container out of the port or a flat rack out of the port before the free time, there's charges. If you don't return that empty equipment before an allotted amount of time, there's charges, right? So a lot of this communication is done via email, phone call, text, WhatsApp, whatever. So, by being able to put all those milestones into one, for our instance, upgrading to this new truck dispatch system, and there's a self-service client portal, they can see those milestones and hopefully reduce down on that communication traffic, right?
I mean, that sounds like a phenomenal resource for clients. You said something that, did you say WhatsApp? People use WhatsApp in the
This is international logistics, Fred, and yeah, for instance, we've got clients in India, and they are looking for updates, and they'll hit you with a WhatsApp. What's going on with this cargo? Can you give me a current status? And it's an effective it's an effective method for communicating.
You just taught me something today that I never would have expected.
Drivers actually use it. In a former life, we had drivers and long waiting lines, and to make deliveries into certain fulfillment centers, and drivers had to show proof that they were at the location and what the lines were like. So WhatsApp, it was great for those individual drivers. They can take a picture of, you know, I'm 17 trucks deep in the line. This is the situation. And then you can do a GPS ping, send all that information to whomever needs it. And it's pretty, it's hard to dispute a picture and then a GPS location with a timestamp on it.
We just got a segment here of WhatsApp, the freight logistics industry. Never expect. This is something I'm going to tell people all about. I'm just kind of blown away. All right. So
Yeah.
on a closing note, from Breakbulk, what do you see as some of the biggest issues within the project logistics industry or arena?
Um, right now it's tariffs. It's not really a stable environment, I would say. A lot of people are feeling that. Just because things could change at any given time. That is not going to go away, in my opinion, anytime soon, right? That's a an administration type deal, and we're not going to get into that. So, as a shipper or a company, what we've been trying to do is to educate our clients and say, tariffs are here, they're variable. You need to have tools in your toolbox to be able to mitigate those risks. And that goes back to Harbor Freight Transport, all the locations that we operate. We are class three customs bonded as well as CFS bonded. So you can bring cargo into our facilities, we can move it, you can defer your duties and taxes until you need to pull those out of there. So it's really a cash flow play, right? Um, Historically, somebody who's bringing in, let's say, a large importer, let's say, you know, 10,000 containers a year, when you look at moving 10,000 containers a year coming into the US and you look at the duties and tariffs that they would have to pay, you could be upwards into millions of dollars on a monthly basis. And that's coming right off your bottom line cash flow, right? So you got to pay that. By using a bonded warehouse, you can bring the same amount of containers in, have the product closer to the end user. You don't have to pay those duties and taxes until you pull that product out of the bonded warehouse facility. You're only paying the duties and taxes at that duty and tax rate at the time that you extract the product out. So if you think about it, you could, if you're spending $1 million in paying upfront duties and taxes just to customs clear your products coming into the US, if you have an agile inventory, you can say, I'm only going to customs clear my fast moving products. So maybe I'm going to take that $1 million spend and I'm going to reduce it down to, these are the absolute products that I have to have on the shelf or in the job site at this point in time. So maybe I just spend $250,000. Now I'm deferring that $750,000 cash flow, not taking it out of my working capital, etc. You still have the products here landed in the US. You're offsetting that cost and you're utilizing those tools to be able to improve cash flow and you know take the variability out of your supply chain.
Makes sense to me. What I just heard was that if I'm shipping large amounts of project logistics stuff in, and I want to minimize my spend on tariffs and fees, Harbor Freight will help me out because you can store it until it's time to go to the end place, which hopefully will be after or during a more reduced tariff regime period.
Correct. Yeah.
Those tariffs aren't going away. They're just going to fluctuate.
Right.
All right. Before we end this, any last comments for our viewers, listeners?
We appreciate the support and keep the questions coming. Love doing these sections with you guys, and let's keep cargo flowing through harbor. We're here to help.
I can't end it any better way than what Eric. We'll be back again soon, folks. Thanks for watching.